Well, there you have it at sunrise on a Thursday. Thanks for staying with us as we continue this morning. Now, the Electoral Commission, of course, is urging South Africans this coming weekend to be part of voter registration. All you have to do is go to your nearest voting station. It's all about updating the voters' roll for the 2019 general elections preparations. Over 22,000 voting stations across the country will be open. That's the 11th and the 10th of March this weekend. Joining us in studio this morning to discuss this, we are now with the Vice Chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission, that's Commissioner Tselane. Remember, you can be part of our conversation this morning by giving us a call on 011-447-1742 or 011-447-1620. Good morning to you, Tselane, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me here.
All right, so it's a big weekend that lies ahead for us as a country. The significance of this weekend when it comes to voter registration weekend, why do we all have to show up?
Well, the most important thing about this weekend is that we are providing the South Africans with a platform to either update their details, particularly the addresses, those for whom we do not have addresses. But it's also an opportunity for individuals who have actually moved since the last election to re-register in the area where they now stay. And then also we are giving opportunity to first-time voters to register in order to be ready to participate in the elections of 2019. Okay,
talking about first-time voters, in terms of like numbers of people that we're expecting, do you have an idea as the IEC?
No, we don't necessarily have the number, but we may be aware that in terms of people for whom we don't have addresses, we've got about 2.8 million people. So we are hoping...
These are already on the voters' roll?
They're already on the voters' roll. But unfortunately, we had not captured their address details, and we are required in terms of the law, particularly Section 16.3 of the Electoral Act, to capture the addresses of people. But also, this matter was emphasized by the Constitutional Court ahead of the 2016 local government elections.
So how are you going to deal with that? And looking at how you managed it in the previous elections, how is that going to be tackled?
Well, we are opening all the stations, and we're hoping that our South African people will go to the voting stations or registration stations to update their details. And we will see after this process how many we have been able to capture, and then we will take it from there. But we are required by the Constitutional Court to give the report, the last report, on this issue of address capturing by the end of June this year.
So in terms of like those people who, you said they're about what, 2 million?
2.8 million.
2.8 million whose addresses are not on the voters' roll. How do they know that they don't have addresses and that they have to be to correct that?
Yeah, it is not possible for every person to know, and that's why we are opening the station so that everyone could actually go and check their details. But also we've made a facility on online where a person can actually be able to check their details. So all you've got to do, you send your ID number to 32810 number, and then immediately it will indicate as to whether you've got whether you are properly registered and then where you are registered, and then your details as well.
So this is via SMS?
Yeah.
So let's say I do that and I check and then I happen to be part of the 2.8 million, my address is not there. Can I correct it online or I still to physically be at
If you've got access to the internet, of course you can correct it online. But if you don't have, we are encouraging people obviously to go to the stations. We have made it easier and accessible for people to go to the stations. We are opening all the more than 22,000 voting stations in the country so that it is easy for people to access those areas.
Okay, so we're taking your calls. We're talking to the IEC Vice Chairperson this morning, Tselane. If you have questions in regards to the voter registration weekend and issues around the voters' roll, you can call us on 011-447-1742 or 447-1620 right away. Okay, in terms of like challenges with the voters' roll besides the Constitutional Court ruling, what are some of the things that you've had to deal with?
Well, the majority of people, once they have moved from one area to the other, they don't actually update their details. And on the day of the elections, they turn up and want to register, to vote, and then we unfortunately have got to tell people that they are not registered in that area. Even if they are staying there, they've got to go back to the areas where they had previously registered. So it is one of the things that actually become an inconvenience for a person who wants to participate in the process. That's why it's important for people, once you have moved houses or you're no longer staying where you used to stay, to make sure that when we open the registration stations, you go to the registration stations and you update the details.
Okay, so just back to that constitutional ruling, you said there were different stages of reporting that you've done as the IEC, the final one being the one that's coming up in June. Just take us through what has happened so far in terms of that reporting. Well,
the most important element about the Constitutional Court judgment was that following the Clockway by-elections, we were supposed to make sure that all the South Africans have got addresses. And the Constitutional Court said we're going to have to report every 6 months about the progress that we have made since then. At the time when we started with this process, we had about 16 million people for whom we do not actually have addresses. Some of them, of course, had partial addresses, some postal addresses. So we had to go through our voters' roll, try to get information and see who has got the generic address and who does not have a generic address, and then try to make sure that every person has got the details captured on the voters' roll. But also what we had to do, we had to sit with various service providers. We had to sit with Cell C, MTN, Vodacom. We had to sit with Statistics South Africa to basically try to find what kind of data do they have that can actually assist us. And then we found that sometimes the data that we found was inconsistent. In other words, you find that you are a person who has actually registered your parent, and your parent is staying somewhere in Limpopo, but the address that you have used to acquire a cell phone, it is here in Johannesburg. So,
so it doesn't correspond.
It does not really correspond, and it does not serve our purpose.
Okay. So let's talk about the things that people need to understand about that correct address. So what are the acceptable types of addresses according to the ruling that you have to adhere to?
Remember when we started with this process, we said to the Constitutional Court, there are many people in our country who do not have conventional addresses, particularly people who are living in informal settlements and in villages. So the Constitutional Court said to us, you have to get addresses because the law says we've got to have addresses. So in areas where you do not have conventional addresses, they said we must get what they call sufficient particularities. So in other words, it is sufficient information that assists us to be able to locate a person within the correct voting district. But also it's an important information for the political parties, because when political parties are campaigning, then they know that they're campaigning to a proper constituency for the purpose, particularly for the purpose of by-elections. So we've been capturing that information. It is a story about where a person is located. But of course, we can't put that information on the voters' roll. But it is on a form that we call RECAS form, which is like an affirmation statement. But on the form, on the voters' roll itself, there will be information that says RECAS instead of actually writing the whole story, so that any person who is interested can be able to check, and we will be able to pull out that form of that particular individual. All
right, let's take a caller. We've got Sean on the line. Hello, Sean.
Hey, how are you, Cecily?
We're good, and you?
Fine, man. I got a question here, ne?
Go ahead.
My brother is born from Lesotho 1968. But since then, my mom was staying in South Africa, I don't know when, 50-something, ne? And welcome. So now, my mom had passed away, and if he found that my brother's ID is blocked, how to do about that? And all along was voting, and went to register last for local municipality, tell you, your ID is blocked.
Okay, what happens in that case? Is that an AEC issue, or he must go to Home Affairs?
He must go to the Home Affairs and then try to establish what the problem is.
Yeah.
From our side, Section 6.1 of the Electoral Act requires us to have certain minimum requirements for a person who is actually registering. You've got to be a South African, and you've got to have either a barcoded ID or a smart card. So we will only be able to register a person And then a person will only be able to participate in the elections when you are 18 years and above, and you have a barcoded ID or smart card, and you are a South African citizen. So you've got to be a South African citizen.
Okay, so talking about that, there's a big debate, obviously, with current Minister of Home Affairs involving the Guptas around nationalization, being residents of South Africa. Are they on the voters' roll? What is your understanding of that from the IEC's point of view?
We were given certain numbers to establish as to whether those people are indeed registered. And I can confirm that a certain Atul Gupta and a certain Rajesh Gupta are indeed registered in Saxon World Primary School. And for you to be able to participate in the process and to be able to register, you have to be a South African citizen and not a permanent citizen. But you've got to be a South African citizen, 18 years and above, and you've got to present yourself in person to the voting station or to the registration station.
All right, so then you SMS on that number again. What's that number?
32810.
32810. Mr. Tselane, thanks very much for joining us this morning.